It's Wednesday, and you're listening to Warlock Wednesday on Ehnotherpodcast.com.
Hello everyone and welcome to another Warlock Hour. It's Warlock Wednesdays with Rayzor, and I got a big show, lots of talking to get through, lots of information to get through. There's been a busy week for me personally as I did some research on some stuff that I'm going to get to. But as always, every week here at the Warlock Hour, we're going to start you off with your comic book releases. So, for this week, coming out today, when you're listening, I am recording on Monday. Remember, I always record on Mondays, sometimes Tuesday mornings, but usually Monday nights. It's nice, it's quiet, it's a good time for me to record, so Mondays I always record, but these comics will be coming out the same day you listen to this podcast. From DC this week, DC Comics presents Action Comics number 20, Ami Commie Girls number 3, Detective Comics number 20, Green Arrow number 20, and Swamp Thing number 20. Again, for me, I'm not a big DC fan. I do like some of their work, but I'm more of the Batgirl Suicide Squad fan. So those are two books that I collect, and so unfortunately none of these books are interested to me. Although I know out there's a lot of fans of Superman and Batman, and Action Comics and Detective Comics are the ones that definitely go with those two superheroes. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Then we have Green Arrow for those Green Arrow fans, and Swamp Thing for any Swamp Thing fans. That just interests me because I'm so happy to see Swamp Thing still kicking around after all these years. So, moving on to Marvel. Marvel's releases this week. All 5 of these I will be picking up myself. Age of Ultron number 7, which is part of the 10-part series. All New X-Men number 11. Hawkeye number 10. Superior Spider-Man number 9, and Thanos Rising number 2, which is a 5-part miniseries. So that's all from Marvel this week. Again, I will actually be picking up all 5 of these books, as I'm collecting the 4 titles that are, or the 3 continuing titles, and the 2 specialty titles, Thanos Rising and Age of Ultron. Not sure how I feel about Age of Ultron, but, you know, some of these miniseries are nice to have, just as a nice little collection. You never know, might be worth something someday. Thanos Rising, I'm interested in that because Thanos is probably one of my favorite bad guys in the Marvel Universe, and he's one of the most powerful as well, especially when he has the Infinity Gauntlet. And as many of you comic book fans and nerds out there alike know, Thanos will be the big bad of Avengers 2 in 2015, so finding out about him now is nice little kind of origin story-esque learning about him. From the Independents this week, from Dynamite Entertainment, a slew of comics. First from, I already said Dynamite Entertainment. I was going to say it again. Oh well. Army of Darkness, number 13. Black Bat, number 1. Kevin Smith's The Bionic Man, number 19. Again, for those of you who have been paying attention the last few months, Kevin Smith wrote a script for a Bionic Man movie. Unfortunately, that movie was never made. So what he did is he took that movie script and he turned it into a comic book series. And that's what this is, Kevin Smith's Bionic Man, number 19. Miss Fury, number 2. I have trouble saying Fury. I don't know why. That one, I enjoyed the first one, so I will be picking up the second one and probably adding it to my pull list. Red Sonja Unchained number 2, and speaking of Red Sonja, coming out, I believe, in May or June, late May, early June, they're going to be starting Red Sonja over again, and the writer is my favorite writer, currently anyways, Gail Simone. Gail Simone currently writes Batgirl. She's also done stints on Wonder Woman, Birds of Prey, one of the greatest fan-appreciated Birds of Prey, and she's also worked on a few other DC titles. This is her first non-DC title in a while, and I'm looking forward to it, and because she's writing it, I will be picking it up. And the final book from Dynamite Entertainment, Vampirella Strikes number 5. From Image Comics this week, Spawn number 231. So that, my friends, is this week's comic book releases that I thought might interest not only myself, but you, the listening audience. So moving on to entertainment, movie, TV, and all other news that's kind of entertainment related, I'm going to just pause for a second.
Hi, I'm Rob Succhetto, and you're listening to Ehnother
All right, so continuing on, as I said, with some entertainment news, and I've got lots of entertainment news to go through. There's just been so much that's been happening this past week, and since the last time I recorded, there's been, wow, I mean, well, I'm going to get to it. But first, I'm going to do what I always do, and that's the weekend box office report. So for this past weekend, the number one movie was a new release, Pain and Gain, starring Marky Mark and Dwayne Johnson. The movie brought in $20.2 million to claim the number one spot. Oblivion slips to number 2 with $17.8 million. Falling to 3 is 42 at $10.6 million. Another new release comes in at number 4 with $7.5 million, and that's The Big Wedding. The Croods drops a little bit this week from 3 to 5, bringing in $6.7 million. G.I. Joe down a spot, $3.7 million. Scary Movie 5 brings in $3.4 million, a drop of 3 spots from 4th to 7th. Olympus Has Fallen brings in $2.8 million. The Place Beyond the Pines drops 3 spots with $2.6 million. And rounding out the top 10, dropping from 9th to 10th, Jurassic Park 3D, another $2.3 million. Now, the number one movie, as I said, was Pain and Gain. And that is a North American. I always do the North American releases, and sometimes I'll give you, when it's a blockbuster film, I will tell you over, a span of weeks, maybe not every week, but I will give you the overseas numbers. Well, because this coming week, our new release, and the only one coming out next week, is Iron Man 3. Well, Iron Man 3 has already been released overseas in places like the United Kingdom, Ireland, I believe even Australia and some other European countries have this release. Well, overseas, the number one movie was Iron Man 3. The overseas numbers already for Iron Man 3, not released in North America, $198.4 million. It almost made $200 million overseas. It's not released in North America till this weekend. This weekend, that movie is projected to do between $100 and $150 million. I'm predicting $134 million minimum. So let's see next week how close I get to that number. They're predicting between 100 and 150 million. I'm predicting about 134, which is almost smack dab in the middle, just a little bit more. And I think it can do it. Iron Man 3 looks fantastic. I am looking forward to it. I will be seeing it Friday afternoon with friends and family, and I cannot wait. Now, speaking of Iron Man 3, this past week, and you heard a little bit about it on Ehnother Podcast on Monday, Disney wanted to renegotiate with exhibitors, that's the theaters that you go see the movies at, the revenue sharing between the distributor, which was Disney, and the exhibitor, which are the theaters. They wanted to renegotiate how much Disney gets, basically. They wanted to renegotiate the contract for not only Iron Man 3, but basically all their kind of blockbuster movies. They're looking at not only Iron Man 3 here, they're looking into the future with movies like Monsters University, which is going to be huge for them. They're looking at Thor 2 coming out in November. And, of course, next year's slate of Marvel movies, Captain America 2, Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and into 2015 when they release Avengers 2 and Star Wars Episode 7. This is a negotiation, and it's a precedent negotiation, because not only will this affect the Disney products, this is going to affect the studios that compete with Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Miramax, Weinstein Company, Lionsgate. All these other companies now are going to have a precedent to renegotiate contracts on their big budget films, on their quote-unquote blockbuster movies, to get a bigger chunk of the pie. Now, I've worked for a movie theater for over 15 years. That's a very long time, and while it's not as enjoyable as it once was, being part of the movie industry in this little aspect has always been something that I've enjoyed. The thing is, they never tell you the truth. And I I mean, that's fine. I'm an employee. I'm not a manager or a CEO or COO or however many initials it takes to get up into the hierarchy of the movie industry within a theater company. So not knowing all the facts is fine. However, it's that they lie to you when they tell you that theaters make... Well, they're not lying when they say theaters don't make as much on tickets. Most of what a theater makes is made on the concessions and the extras, like if they have like a play area for arcades, an arcade area, or if they have like a restaurant in the theater. Like some have the concessions where you buy your popcorn and your candies and your drinks, but then some also have like what are referred to as RBOs, or restaurant business outlets, which means the places like a pizza chain or some kind of like food that is not normally associated with theater, like a hamburger, french fries, chicken wings, stuff like that. That's where a theater makes its money. That's where it pays its employees. That's where it makes its money. That's where it covers overhead costs like the building rentals and the equipment running and the lighting and everything and so on and so on and so on. That's where all the money's made. But they tell you that, yes, there's a little chunk of change that the theater makes off the ticket sales. Now, I had always been led to believe that this chunk of change that the theaters make was very minuscule, within the 20% range. So basically, if a ticket costs $10, the theater gets $2, Disney would get $8. I'm using Disney as an example just because this is what the dispute was over. Excuse me while I take a drink. Okay, so a $10 ticket, and I know that's cheap for some and expensive for others, but I'm just rounding it down so it makes it easy percentage-wise, because this is going to be a lot of facts and figures here. So at that percentage, the theater would get $2 from every ticket sale, and then the Disney would get $8 for every ticket sale. And what was disputed was that now they wanted, say, like 90%, where the theater would only get $1 for every ticket sold, and the Disney would get $9 for every ticket sold. Well, doing a lot of research this past week from about April 23rd onward, because 23rd is when I found out all this information, when I started to find out that not only was there a dispute, there was serious, although I don't know how serious, because I'll get into that a little bit more later, but there were serious threats that Disney would not be showing the movie in certain theater chains because if the contract could not be negotiated. Now, when I say a serious threat, that was the threat. However, it was, to me, I never took it too seriously, although it was very worrisome. Because I live in a city where there is only one theater, the theater I work at. That's the only theater where I could see movies. There is another low-rent theater place where I don't know too much of what people know, but it's a second-run house. And what that means is they don't get movies until my theater's done with them. So if we have, like, for example, if we run a movie for 2.5 months, they can't have that movie for 2.5 months. They're not allowed. It's part of the it's part of what they run. They run a second run house. They'll bring in some artsy fartsy movies every now and then that we pass on. And even when we pass as a theater, and we don't choose, our head office decides, like, our theater doesn't specifically say, well, no, we're not going to take that. Our head office or the distributors decide, well, we're not going to send it to that theater. They still have to wait 2 weeks before they could show a movie. So they never open a brand new movie opening weekend. Never, ever, ever. That's not what they are. They're a second-run theater. They open movies after we're done with them, or 2 weeks after our theater has been told that they pass on them. So that's the way that works. So in my city, there is only one theater where I can go watch movies, and happens to be one of the companies that was in dispute with the contract. Now, I'm going to say the companies because they're major companies. In the United States, it was Regal Entertainment Group, which is the largest U.S. company, AMC Entertainment Holdings Incorporated, which is the number 2 company, and Cinemark Holdings Incorporated, which was the number 3 company, and here in Canada, Cineplex Entertainment Limited, which is the largest chain in Canada. I don't know the exact percentages, but from some of the information I can gather, Cineplex basically has 80 to 87% of all the theaters across Canada. Now, Canada is a pretty big country. We only have 30 million people, approximately 30 to 5 million people in our country, but 80 to 85% of the theaters that exist in Canada are run by Cineplex Entertainment. The rest are divvied up among some very small companies, with the exception being AMC, and AMC only holds theaters in some of our major cities, where Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and maybe not even all those, but only the major cities. So my city's not considered a major city, so we only have a Cineplex theater. So I guess I just revealed where I work, but I mean, that's what we have. And what was happening was basically the percentage that the theaters would get, according to Bloomberg, which is a, for those of you who don't know, basically they are a business website. Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. These are two of the sites that I use in my information gathering and trying to figure out what was going on, because, well, let's face it, they're a business institute. They know what happens. And their quote: "Big budget movies typically command a larger share of the box office take than the average for studios, which get about 52% of annual ticket revenue after cinema operators deduct a small percentage for overhead." Okay, so that's basically saying 52% of the tickets goes back to the distributor on a normal movie, and about 55%, as the article goes on, for a big budget movie. So 55%. So using our model of $10, that means $5.50 goes to Disney, $4.50 would go to the theater to cover expenses. Okay? Well, now Disney was asking for as high as 65% of the revenue, which is a 10% increase. Now, let's say this movie makes $300 million, which it's easily going to make. Let's be honest here. It's easily going to make $300 million in North America. That would mean all the theaters, and this is thousands of theaters, would have to share in a loss of approximately $30 million. And that's spread out, yes. But that also means that now their percentage is smaller. So 65%, that means they only get 35%. The movie makes $300 million. You're only looking at, what, rough estimate? That's a little bit difficult. I'm probably thinking in somewhere of $90 million range as opposed to $109 million. Like, you're probably looking at about $110 million. You're looking at about a $20 million gap, basically. Maybe $10 million. I probably said that wrong. $10 million gap. Now, that's to be spread out among all these theaters. So the percentages are very misleading by some theaters. And this isn't for every theater. This is an average. But an average means that you're not going to get the high 80s that people are saying and the low numbers that people think. It's just that with Disney now owning 3 basic major movie producing companies themselves, who were always big, and then you add in their animation departments, including Pixar. That was Disney, and that's been Disney for a very long time. But in the last, maybe 7 years, they purchased Marvel Studios, which is now a big moneymaker for them, especially after Avengers last year. And more recently, they just purchased Lucasfilms, which is on the slate to be producing a Star Wars movie, as I said last week, from 2015 on until the new trilogy is complete, with a new trilogy movie coming out every 3 years after the first one. So 2015, 2018, and 2021. So from 2015 to 2021, there's a Star Wars movie coming out every year. So that's a lot of money. So you can see why it's very important that to Disney, they get a bigger share. Because, now, again, I did a lot of research, and Bloomberg says sales this year are down so far. That's not to say that they won't increase. Some of the bigger movies of the year are slated to come out, starting with Iron Man 3 and moving forward. There wasn't a lot of huge movies that came out in the first third or first quarter of the year. The big movies are now going to start coming out now and moving forward. But as I said, this sets precedent. We now have a precedent set because while the dispute was going on, I followed it closely. Last Thursday, Disney settled with the three major American studios. I believe I said them already, but just to recap, Regal Entertainment Group, AMC Entertainment Holdings, and Cinemark Holdings Incorporated. And those three groups settled last Thursday on an agreement. No details were released. See, details usually don't get released until after a contract expires, and then you find out what it kind of was. I'm guessing that both sides had to cave. Because, let's face it, let's be realistic here. There was no way in hell that Disney was going to not put its movie into theaters and lose the money as opposed to making a smaller percentage than what they wanted. That would be insane. And when you have the three major chains in the US and the one major chain in Canada all in dispute, you're obviously not going to show your movie. Double negative, I hated that, so let me just rephrase that. So you're obviously going to make sure that your movie is going to be shown, because you're not going to lose out on all that cash that you would make if your movie was shown, even if it's at a lower price or lower percentage of the ticket sale than you're requesting, but maybe more than you're getting now. They were getting before. Also, theaters, the exhibitors in this situation, are not going to lose out on all the concession sales that they're going to make from a movie with the pulling power of Iron Man, especially when this movie is going to feed off of what the Avengers did. And it doesn't have to equal the Avengers. It never will. Avengers is the third highest grossing movie of all time. It's never going to reach that peak, but this is the first movie post-Avengers. This is big. People are now invested in this. Avengers did something that a lot of movies want to do. They reached outside the target audience. They brought in people who were basically not necessarily comic book readers or not necessarily seen all the movies that came out before. Maybe they were a Thor fan, so they seen the Thor movie, and then they wanted to come and see Avengers. Maybe they were an Iron Man fan, so they came and seen the Iron Man movie, and then they came and seen the Avengers, and then they were a Captain America fan. They loved the Captain America movie, and then they came and seen Avengers. They brought every one of them together. That's what an ensemble movie does like that. But this is the first post-Avengers movie, so it's going to have a lot of people coming out and saying, maybe I should go see that Iron Man movie because Avengers was pretty damn good. And that's where the exhibitors, the theater companies, cannot lose that concession sale, because as I said, a big chunk of their percentages, of their profits, are from the concession sales. That's how they pay that's mostly how they pay the bills. That is mostly how they pay for the workers, myself included. That's how they pay my wages. That's how they pay managers' salaries. That's how they pay for a lot of stuff, is through concessions. So realistically, as I said, I was worried because it's the first time since 2006 that Disney has really negotiated a contract. So that's a long time. It's the first time where it was very seriously threatened that movies were not going to be shown at certain theaters if the negotiations turned bad or turned sour or what have you. So I was worried, but at the same time I'm like, okay, these companies are not stupid. In fact, I even said that if Cineplex Entertainment, which as I said is the major company in Canada and the one I do work for, if they did not negotiate a contract, no matter what happens with Disney, I would be upset and be looking for a new job. Because if I work for a company that's more greedy than Disney, what does that really do for me? I mean, honestly, I don't want to say that it's a bad company to work for, because it's not. But it would be hard to work for a company that turned down such they're a multi-billion-dollar company. I can look it up on the Toronto Stock Exchange and see how much they make. It's a publicly traded company, so I'm not doing anything against company policy in saying that. To lose approximately less than $30 million to not show that movie would be stupid. It would be idiotic. It would be moronic. And I don't think personally, from my personal views, I could work for a company that was that stupid for one, and that idiotic for not wanting to lose that little bit of revenue to gain the extra revenue of the concessions that you know that they're going to mark up anyways. And here's what I see in the future anyways. No matter what the negotiations were, as I said, neither the American side or the Canadian side released the terms. Terms were not disclosed. As I said, a contract that's new will never have terms disclosed. You have to probably wait a few years before they find out exactly what the compromises were. They know, the public doesn't. They don't think the public needs to know, and that's fine. But the thing is, it's basically saying that whatever that percentage is, it would be minuscule to what they would lose if they didn't sell the concessions. And that, to me, as a personal thing, I couldn't work for that company anymore. So I'm glad that everything was settled. I really wasn't worried, but as I said, I did go on a limb and I did say that, and I probably would be looking for a job if it hadn't come through. But it did. The Canadian one took a little longer. As I said, the Americans settled on Thursday of last week. The Canadians did not settle till late Sunday night, early Monday morning. In fact, not only did I receive a text from my manager Monday morning, I also had an alert ready on my computer when I woke up because, as I said, I've been following this closely, and I was very interested in it. And I know not a lot of you are interested in facts and figures. I get told all the time, especially on Facebook and in a lot of my groups, that I go into facts and figures too much. You know what? I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I do this. This is what I do. I look up things. I look for information. Yeah, it's boring. It's not always great. But honestly speaking, it's something that I enjoy. And I'm putting it out there because, let's face it, some people don't know the information. Some people don't know what's going on. Well, now you kind of do. With everything that was going on this week, it sets precedents. It was very important to moviegoers like myself. Not only do I work for a movie theater, I love movies. I love movies. That's why I like working at a movie theater. Even though the job isn't as fun as it once was, working at a movie theater has to be a very cool job because I'm around movies. I love movies. And I'm hoping you do too, and that's why you listen sometimes, and maybe it's not, but this is important to me, and that's why I continued on. So, enough with the facts and figures about this dispute. It was settled. We're good. Iron Man 3 is coming to a screen near you. Check it out May 3rd. May 2nd, some theaters are showing 10 o'clock, midnight shows, whatever. So I know some theaters in some of the major markets, not mine, unfortunately, are actually doing an Iron Man marathon where you get to watch the first one, the second one, and the third one. So go out, enjoy the movie. Hopefully I'll get some feedback from people. But either way, I'm going to see it Friday, so on the next podcast you'll have maybe a review from me. But you also get a review from James and OJ on their podcasts on the network, so maybe you don't want to hear mine, but you know what? You might get it anyways. So moving on to other movie news. Last week, after recording, obviously, the premiere for Pain and Gain, the Hollywood Los Angeles premiere happened, and there was a person missing. Dwayne Johnson had to have emergency surgery and had to miss the premiere. Michael Bay, who was the director of the film, had to say something. Now, it could be taken out of context. It's hard to understand in an article. He could have been joking, but Dwayne Johnson had to go emergency hernia surgery and also needed some torn abs fixed. So he had to go undergo emergency surgery for that. I missed the premiere, and Michael Bay, according to this article and other articles I've read, said, "It's time for Dwayne Johnson to grow up and stop wrestling 300-pound men." He said Johnson is injured and was pushing it too hard. Okay, now for those of you who don't know, Dwayne Johnson was injured at WrestleMania 29 on April 7th. He was wrestling John Cena. Okay, 1, John Cena is 260 pounds, not 300. 2, while it is physical and obviously injuries happen, it is a worked environment. They do know what's going to happen. They know what moves are going to be done. It's choreographed. Everybody says it's fake. It's not fake. It's choreographed. They know who's going to win beforehand. Yeah. But it's still choreographed. It's still very physical. People still get injured. This injury hurts. Now, this is probably going to delay Johnson's next movie, Hercules, while he's recovering from the surgery. They're not sure if it's going to postpone the shooting, but it may. They may be able to start doing some of the background stuff and other stuff that doesn't involve him, because he's not going to be in every single scene, let's be honest. He is a big part of the movie, so let's hope they don't have to postpone shooting. However, one thing that Michael Bay does mention that I do agree with, this could in fact lead studios to write in a no wrestling clause in future contracts. Now, Dwayne Johnson started out as a football player, but really became famous as a WWE superstar. That's where he made his fame and then went into movies. I could very easily see studios who are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into some of the blockbusters that he's going to be in. I mean, he's in so many this year, and he's working on more already. I could very easily see them putting a no wrestling clause into his contract. Now, would that mean that he'd never wrestle again? Honestly, the man's 40 years old. He can't have that much wrestling left in him. But at the same time, it just means he can't wrestle while he's under contract. So while he's between movies and there's enough lead time, or downtime, or whatever you want to call it, he could probably still wrestle. Now, here's my thing to Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne, I loved you as The Rock. You've been a great WWE superstar. You're always going to be the people's champ. You're a first ballot Hall of Famer. It may be, in fact, time to hang up the wrestling boots, focus on that acting career, because honestly, I love your movies. I think you're an impressive actor. Not only can you do the action movies, you're quite funny in a lot of the comedic roles. So please maybe take into consideration that this may have to be the end of your WWE career as far as in-ring performances. That's not to say that he can't return to do other things, but as far as in-ring performances go, I think it may be time to hang up the wrestling boots. Everyone has to do it at some point. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. Alright, moving on to some Avengers 2 news. Joss Whedon's been dropping little tidbits here and there, and this past week he revealed, I finished a draft and I'm redoing it now. I think it's in really good shape. We're in a very good place. This is, of course, in reference to the script that he's writing for Avengers 2. He went on to say, he was asked about the pressure to top his first film. So, just to give you the question, I try not to think of it as topping it. I try to think of this as its own movie. Sometimes, yeah, I feel pressure. And by the way, Shane Black not helping Iron Man 3, not helping, because I saw this, and man, he really got it right. But when you're in the story and you're dealing with these characters that you love, that everybody loves, when you've got the new characters sliding in next to them, it's very exciting. Then I don't feel pressure. It's like I'm reading my favorite comic. He was asked about new characters. He says, I've got these 2 characters. 2 of my favorite characters from the comic book, a brother-sister act. They're in the movie. Now, for me, first thing I think of Avengers, brother-sister, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch. Only brother-sister combo that I can think of, and I don't know if there's any out there. They're the only brother-sister combo that I can think of. Now, here's the kicker. These 2 are also X-Men. They are mutants who are part of the Avengers. However, it is proven that Marvel does share the rights with Fox. So they can use them in the movie. It is very possible that we will see Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch in the new Avengers movie. But however, he's not saying, he just said brother, sister, and they're in the movie. Okay, so he asks if he's having fun with the sequel. He says, it's going really well. Eventually someone will explain to me that it's not and pull me out of my bubble. I've been writing and meeting with actors and we're starting to storyboard all the preliminary processes. This is the part where it's all still fun. And then he was asked about S.H.I.E.L.D., or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as it is now called. And he said, well, there's no update in terms of they haven't said, go and make many of these for it shall be on the air. We finished the pilot. Agent Coulson is in it, and we explain why in the pilot. It is wonderful, and he is phenomenal in it. We should find out in the very near future whether or not everyone else gets to enjoy it as much as we already have. So it's not official that ABC has picked it up, but let's be honest. If they don't, again, stupidity, moronicy, that's not a word. Very stupid if they don't. Continuing with Joss Whedon, I'm not the guy who has to worry about him being replaced. This is in reference to Robert Downey Jr. Returning as Tony Stark. He is Iron Man at this point. When I heard that he was cast and I knew that something had just changed, and I usually don't know stuff like that, I was like, now we are in a new phase. The way he embodies it, I love working with him. He's so perfect for it. Shane captures it so perfectly in this movie, and that's reference to Iron Man 3. I want him to play it forever. The great thing is that he has a flying metal suit, so it's not like those Charles Bronson or Roger Moore movies that you're like, dude, you can barely stand. He's got some fight in him. At the same time, if Robert decides to hang it up, he has a perfectly good excuse. When he asked why the Avengers should worry about Thanos, Whedon said this. Well, Thanos is more powerful. He is so powerful, he's not someone you can just trot out and punch him. Like he did in the comics, you want him to be threading through the universe and to save the big finale for the big finale. He is definitely a part of what I've got going on. The thing about the Avengers is that they are very powerful, but they're not very stable. So there will definitely be some people that will shake them up in the next installment. Now, this says two things to me. One, that Thanos is going to be a badass villain. That is what I want. That is amazing. Two, they might not defeat Thanos. They might just kind of push him back. And then in a third Avengers film, then they defeat Thanos. That's a very real possibility from that little snippet of a statement that Joss Whedon has teased about. Now, we got so long to wait for May 1st, 2015, which is the release date for Avengers 2. But getting this information is always very cool and very fun. Moving on, Scarlett Johansson, kind of a nice segue since she's in the Avengers movies. She is set to star in Lucy, which is Luc Besson's his new sci-fi action film. For those of you who don't know Luc Besson, you probably do. If you've seen The Fifth Element, or if you've seen Leon the Professional, starring Jean Reno, Gary Oldman, and Natalie Portman, or if you've seen even his production company's been responsible for the Taken franchise and the Transporters franchise, you know his work. Luc Besson is a wonderful writer-director, and he's making a new sci-fi action film called Lucy, and Scarlett Johansson is going to be in this movie. I'm sold. This is not a movie that will suck. This is a movie that will be entertaining and probably very intense. Now, here's the little snippet on what Lucy is. It will center on a woman who is forced to be a drug mule, but when the drugs are absorbed into her system, they transform her into the ultimate unfeeling, kick-ass machine. She has the ability to absorb information and knowledge like a sponge in water, and the ability to move objects with her mind. So, it's different. I'm assuming these drugs aren't your typical heroin, cocaine, and that kind of drugs, but some kind of drugs that it's going to... It's a sci-fi film, so these drugs enhance her abilities. So, I'm definitely looking forward to this, and it's nowhere near completion. As I said, she's just signed on, but I think it's going to be interesting to find out where it goes. Alright, my old pal Michael Bay. I say that with sarcasm for those of you who didn't get it. Okay, Michael Bay updates us on Transformers 4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As I said last week, it is now back to being called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, so there was a quote, and this is Michael Bay talking. There was a quote saying that we're making the Ninja Turtles as aliens. We're not. It's the ooze. It's from the original source material. These are from the original writers, or writer, as we all know, only one's involved. And I never went out to correct myself in the press, which is something he probably should have done. He goes on to say, I do listen to the fans, and I do want this to be authentic. I think they're going to be really happy with this movie. When I see the digital stuff, the Turtles look great. Now, as we know, this is being directed by Jonathan Liebesman, not Michael Bay. He's just producing it. The film is got not a great cast. However, maybe I'm going to wait until I see a trailer. I did say if they're not aliens, if they go back to using the ooze and to doing it right, I would give it an honest indication. The thing that still bothers me the most is Megan Fox's April O'Neil. That bothers me a lot. However, well, we'll just have to see. Okay, so Michael Bay is also going to be directing Transformers 4, and that's going to star Marky Mark, Jack Renard, Stanley Tucci, and Nicola Peltz. And he says, there are a couple of historians of Transformers. I would do my designs of the robots, and they're like, what if you just add a little bit more ears to Optimus? But they're really hands-off. We've redesigned them in Transformers 4, and there's some really cool shit in it. I'm literally redesigning every character top to bottom. There's a reason why they're redesigned, but it's also to keep it new and fresh to me. I think the fans will appreciate some of this new stuff we have in the movie, and some of the new characters. So, just to let you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is targeted for 2014, June 6th, and 3 weeks later, Transformers 4 will come out. So Michael Bay has 2 movies coming out in June of next year that has the potential to be huge. The Transformers franchise, whether you like them or not, has been successful. I'm looking forward to Transformers 4, mostly because Marky Mark's back in them. Or not back in them, but going to be in them. He's the new star. I love Marky Mark. Can't speak. Marky Mark, I like his acting. I will see it. Again, Ninja Turtles, going to wait and see. Have to see a trailer. I need to see some footage. I need to see some actual stuff. So, not sure where that's going to go. Other casting news. As anybody who's listened to... Well, okay, let's just say it. Will Smith's company, Overbrook Entertainment, is redoing the movie Annie and doing it more modern and not trying to be anything but honest, more black. That's what it says. In this version, in the past, Little Orphan Annie's always been a white child. It's not a racist thing, it's just the way it was written and just the style it was written in. Will Smith's company wants to do this where the child is a black child. And there's nothing wrong with that. Well, we have a casting news. Jamie Foxx is in talks to play the role of Daddy Warbucks. Now, in this updated version, he will not be known as Daddy Warbucks. He will be known as Benjamin Stax. Not sure exactly how that works in, as the original character's name was, I know it was Daddy Warbucks, but I think it was, I can't remember his first name. Oh, it's going to bug me, and I don't want to look it up. I think it was Oliver. But anyways, Daddy Warbucks, it's not going to be Warbucks, it's going to be Stax, so maybe Benjamin Daddy Stax? No, that just sounds wrong. I don't know if they're going to use a nickname. He will be Benjamin Stax if he's does get the role. The role of Annie. Now, in the past, 2 of the main reasons why I became a podcaster, the 2 men that inspired me to want to do this for everybody and for myself, the 2 men most successful in the podcasting world, in my opinion, Kevin Smith and Ralph Garman, do a little show called Hollywood Babylon, not a sponsor. Ralph Garman, in his little section, Movies That Will Suck, that I definitely use and would love to use the little jingle that they use, but haven't got permission, so I can't. In the Movies That Will Suck section, he talked about this movie a while back. And at that time, the role of Annie was to be played by Willow Smith. Well, she's not playing the role anymore. The role is being played by Quevenshane Wallace, the little girl that was in The Beast of the Southern Wild. She will be playing the role of Little Orphan Annie, and as I said, Jamie Foxx is in talks to play the Daddy Warbucks role, which is now Benjamin Stax, and this movie is still being in the works. There's no release date quite yet, but they're trying to set it for December 25th, 2014 is the tentative date. As I said, it will be set in modern times, and we'll just have to see where things go from here. Ghostbusters 3. Still a go, and still could start shooting as early as 2014. So says Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd has been trying to get this movie off the ground for years. He's been working on a script, he's been changing it, he's been adjusting it. He still says the project will start shooting next year, and apparently there's new writers working on the script, trying to take a little bit of scientific approach, and he says, I feel re-encouraged, reinvigorated by the pages that I have seen. I know that we're expecting half of the screenplay to be completed very soon. I should be into production by the fall and be shooting by the new year. I won't say anything. It's very exciting. The Higgs boson and the particle theories, gluons and mesons, that really gives us a scientific base in terms of our fictional storytelling to open up to another dimension and have something horrible come through. Also, he goes on to say about possibly getting Bill Murray. He says, we're going to really put it into ninth gear in this third one. It's going to be very, very exciting. I've been more encouraged than I've ever been. It sounds real now. We've got a sharp new writer on it. Ivan is in on it. Harold is in on it. I'm in on it. And if I can put the catch net on Bill and bring him in, it will be wonderful. If he decides to do it, there will always be a hole for him. So, it was supposed to be a movie that was supposed to be coming out this year, but Sony has stopped it. Dan Aykroyd seems to be the only one still wanting to do this. I personally would go see it. I know that it sounds bad, but I would go see it. I loved the Ghostbusters movies. I know it's not the same now. They're old. They're different, but I'd still go see it. I really would. I don't know how many of you out there still would, but I would. And speaking about Sony, Columbia Pictures sets a couple of release dates. 21 Jump Street 2 will hit theaters June 6, 2014, putting it against the aforementioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They've also moved up their sequel, Think Like a Man 2. It was supposed to be May 30th, 2014. It will now be June 20th, 2014, putting it against How to Train Your Dragon 2. And the Jack Cosden's Sex Tape, which is a comedy, not an actual sex tape, will be July 2nd, and it's a comedy starring Jason Segel, and that will face Maleficent, which is the Angelina Jolie Sleeping Beauty movie. So that's that, and moving on, the on-again, off-again Carrie Fisher news. Initially, she announced that she would be in Star Wars Episode 7. Then she said she wasn't. Well, it is now official again. She announced at the Calgary Comics Expo Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo, that's what it's called, that she would be back. Her quote was, I like being bought by Disney because they never wanted to buy me before. I'm glad they are doing a new movie because they are sending a trainer to my house so I can get in really good shape, so I'm really eating a lot of sugar in advance. As you can see, as I said, she said this at the Comic-Con. By the time I really get down to it, I will have eaten everything. So she's going on a binge because she's going in training because she will be back. She will be back playing Princess Leia in the new Star Wars Episode 7 J.J. Abrams movie, and this is an actual confirmation, not a joke confirmation. I think we all expected it, but it is now official. Carrie Fisher back for Star Wars. And my final little snippet of movie news, Ratchet & Clank, the movie, announced for 2015. We've wanted to do a movie for a long time. Ratchet & Clank's action, humor, and galaxy-spanning adventures have really been the basis for a fantastic game series, and we think it'd translate perfectly to the big screen. And this is from Insomniac Games, and they've now released this information that Ratchet & Clank will be getting a movie on their own, produced by Blockade Entertainment, Rainmaker Entertainment, and, of course, Insomniac Games. They're going to be producing it together. So, for those of you who are Ratchet and Clank fans, you're getting a movie. I'm personally not, but hey, I know people that are. That's why I'm reporting the news. Okay, so I'm going to take a little break, and then we're going to move on to some television news.
Hi, I'm Rob Cicchetto, creator of Zombie Portraits. You can check out Zombie Portraits at zombieportraits.com.
So once again, thanks you to Rob Cicchetto, and be sure to check out zombieportraits.com to see all his work. Okay, as I said before, I was going to move on to some television news. MTV has announced that they are planning to bring Scream, the movie Scream, to the small screen. They've greenlit a project that will be based on the highly successful horror franchise films from Dimension Films. They have been commissioned a 1-hour pilot to reinvent the comedy as a television series. So this would start for the summer of 2014, and Dimension Films is in discussion with the film's original director, Wes Craven, to direct the pilot, and would go from there. He wouldn't direct every episode, but they want him to direct the pilot. And of course, the pilot is how a show gets sold. If the pilot doesn't succeed, then the television series doesn't get made. But MTV is interested in bringing Scream to the small screen. For those of you who watched The Wire, you might know this name. I did not watch The Wire. However, what he's going to be in next interests me. Lawrence Gilliard Jr., I was going to say the third, but it's Lawrence Gilliard Jr. is in talks to join The Walking Dead. I have two little quick articles. The first one says that he was in talks, and he would be playing a character in the series named Roy Stark. Well, that was immediately changed a couple of days later, that it was not Roy Stark. The character he will play is the character of Bob Stuckey, who is in the comics. He will be a regular cast member joining the regular cast and crew. He wouldn't be a recurring. He'd actually be a regular cast member. And basically, he's going to be deeply troubled. He will have charming, confident, and self-depreciating public face. In the comics, apparently, he's an alcoholic medic and a new addition to the Woodbury community. He saved the governor's life after Michonne tortured him and left him for dead. This is according to the article. So he will be joining the cast of The Walking Dead when the 4th season picks up in October. So I thought that was just a little bit of TV news that might interest some people. Definitely interested me as far as The Walking Dead's concerned. It might interest people who are fans of The Walking Dead and The Wire. Okay, as I said before, I don't do many gossip article news, but one that's piqued my interest because he's such a douchebag is Justin Bieber, or as I like to call him, Justine Bieber. Justine went to Germany with a monkey, a 17-week-old capuchin monkey. And it was seized by customs on March 28th because the Biebs, or Justine as I like to call him, or her, did not have the required papers to bring him into the country. So he was taken, or she was taken, Mally, I believe her name is, was taken to a quarantine area and been put in a shelter. She's staying at the shelter right now. He's left the monkey there. He's been doing his tours and not worried. He doesn't care about the monkey. Personally, I don't think he should have had the monkey in the first place. He doesn't know how to care for anything, let alone himself. So he's definitely not going to be able to care for a 17-week-old capuchin monkey. They've sent emails to his agencies. Nothing has come back. The only thing they've gotten back is an email saying, our team is looking into the idea of placing Molly at a zoo in Germany. Would you happen to have any recommendations for places that Molly would be safe and thrive? Again, we are very concerned that Molly is safe and placed in the best possible residence. The customs worker says that Mally will stay in the shelter until Bieber or someone with his power of attorney gets in touch with them directly. Bieber has until May 17th to provide Mally's paperwork. If by May 17th there is nothing, then he loses ownership of the animal and it becomes property of the Federal Republic of Germany. Basically, I hope he loses his ownership and it does become property of the Federal Republic of Germany, because then it will end up in a proper zoo or some kind of hopefully safe place. I'm more concerned about the monkey. I could care less about Justin Bieber or his frackin'. Oh, he just irks me. He's a piss poor Canadian. He's an idiot, a douchebag, a moron. I just want to take my fist and ram it so far down his throat that I can yank his... Well, he doesn't have any balls. Never mind. I just want to punch him really hard. And, you know, I don't really wish death on anyone, but I would not be sad if he died. He doesn't deserve the monkey, and I want the monkey to be safe. I'm really concerned about the monkey at this point. I just hope that she's being treated very well, and that he loses his ownership, and no living creature should ever be in the care of Justin Bieber. Ever. Ever. Alright, moving on. A little bit of gaming news this week. As I said, it would always come when I get it. Microsoft reveals that on May 21st, they will reveal the next Xbox. For those of you who like Xbox, I'm not one of them. Microsoft announced that they reveal the new Xbox at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's West Coast time. And for you Eastern Standard Timers like myself, that would be 1 p.m. in the afternoon. They posted the following: a new generation revealed. Part of this historic online event featuring a live stream, video, images, updates, and more. The event will stream live on Xbox Live, Xbox.com, and can be seen on Spike TV. Most people know that this is going to be the Xbox 720 that was rumored many moons ago. This is the next gen for Xbox, as PlayStation has already announced their PlayStation 4. And so May 21st, that's the date to look forward to for that. Other gaming news, Activision has teased a new Call of Duty game. They released a website with the URL callofduty.com/___________. Now, that's 6 underscores, just so you know. Users will find, if you go to the site, you will find a picture that is slowly starting to take form by tweets. I can't speak. Tweets on Twitter with the hashtag Call of Duty. The game is rumored to be titled Call of Duty Ghosts, and if you count the letters, it matches the 6 underscores. And this, just a little note, Ghosts was also the name of Modern Warfare character Simon Ghost Riley. So it's very... I don't know for sure, but it's definitely looking like that this new Call of Duty game will be on next-gen consoles. The game will officially be revealed this Wednesday, so you can listen to the podcast and then check it out, or check it out and listen to the podcast at the same time. Who knows? But definitely for the Call of Duty fans out there, I'm not one of them, but as again, I don't just do this for me, I do this for everyone. Call of Duty, new game, possibly titled Call of Duty Ghosts. Okay, moving on. No more gaming news. Just a little bit of sports news before I lead into the huge sports news. I'm not a huge UFC fan, but I like watching UFC. I like watching MMA fights. My favorite UFC fighter right now currently is George St. Pierre. It's been rumored for a while that they want a super fight between George St. Pierre, who's a middleweight, to fight who's a welterweight, to move up a division to middleweight to face Anderson the Spider Silva in a super fight. This is a promotional dream, of course. This would be huge bucks. However, St. Pierre said he could never make that division. He basically, after being injured for 19 months, says, there's so many new contenders that I need to do stuff in my division before I take a super fight, because it has moved now. It's too hard. He could not accept a fight with Silva and be totally undersized. Silva is very big, he says. He's 230 pounds. He's a very big guy, walking around very big, and I'm 190 pounds. It's a lot of weight difference. If this fight happens one day, we're going to have to decide what weight class and everything. I don't do a lot of cutting. It would be easier for me to go fight at 155 than fighting at 185. I would be more at my weight naturally. There's guys at 155 that walk around 190 like me. They think I'm big because I have a large frame, but I'm not a big guy. I'm not thick. Silva has competed as low as 168 in Japan. So maybe Silva could get down to about, I would say he'd have to get down to probably about 200 pounds. If St. Pierre is at 190, Silva would have to come down to about 200 or less, and that's it. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. It looks like the next fight that St. Pierre wants is Johnny Hendricks, who's really chomping at the bit to go for the welterweight title. So it's not going to happen anytime soon. Right now, that door is closed. All right. The huge part of the sports is coming up. But first, I want to do baseball. Normally, I do hockey here, but I want to do baseball because hockey is going to be really long. So let's do baseball really quickly with the standings first. In the AL, American League, your division leaders are the Boston Red Sox in the AL East, the Texas Rangers in the AL West, and in the AL Central we have a tie, but not quite. The Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals. Now, the reason why they're tied is because of games played. Detroit is 14-10, and Kansas City is 13-9. Because they've played 2 less games, they could easily be 14-10, which would be a tie. But Detroit has the edge because they have more wins currently. But that is your division leaders. So your wild card looks like this. Baltimore and the New York Yankees would be the wild card winners if the season were to end right now. And Detroit would be in. Kansas City would technically be out because they have the lower of the wins in the win column. But as I said, at the end of the season, you have to play 162 games, so it's still a long way to go. That is your American League. Your National League also has division ties. First of all, in the NL East, you have the Atlanta Braves. In the NL Central, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates leading the way. And in the NL West, a actual tie, Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies, both with a 15-10 record, are your division tied leaders, which also means whatever one wouldn't win the division would be the first wild card, and the second wild card would be the St. Louis Cardinals. So that's your division and wild card standings. Let's move on to some statistics. As I said, I was going to do 3 statistics for hitters and 3 statistics for pitchers. And the statistics I have chosen are home runs, RBIs, and stolen bases for hitters, wins, strikeouts, and saves for pitchers. So, your home run leaders. From the Atlanta Braves, Justin Upton with 12. Tied with 9 from the Baltimore Orioles, Chris Davis. And from the Washington Nationals, Bryce Harper. And 3 players with 8 home runs, J.P. Aaron Sebia of the Toronto Blue Jays, John Buck of the New York Mets, and Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. Your RBI leaders, Chris Davis of the Baltimore Orioles with 28, Mike Napoli of the Red Sox with 27, Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers with 26, Brandon Phillips of the Cincinnati Reds with 24, and John Buck of the New York Mets with 23. Your stolen bases leaders, Jacoby Ellsbury has 11 from the Red Sox, Nate McLouth from the Orioles with 8, Everett Cabrera from the Padres, Coco Crisp from the Athletics, Starling Marte from the Pirates, and John Segura from the Brewers all have 7 steals. Your pitchers, Clay Buchholz and Matt Moore, each with 5, Buchholz from the Red Sox, Moore from the Rays, and 9 others tied at 4 wins. Your strikeout leaders, Yu Darvish of the Texas Rangers with 49, A.J. Burnett with 48 from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Clayton Kershaw from the L.A. Dodgers with 47, Felix Hernandez of the Mariners with 44, and Ryan Dempster of the Red Sox with 43. Your saves leaders, Jason Grilli from the Pirates with 10, Jim Johnson from the Orioles with 10, Mariano Rivera with 9 from the Yankees, and we have 7 more with tied at 8. So those are your statistics. I wanted to do that really quick because, as I said, lots to cover in the NHL news. So let's look at the NHL news. As this is being recorded Monday, we are in no man's land. Yesterday being Sunday the season ended. The final game of the season was won by the Ottawa Senators 4-2. Made me very sad. I wanted Toronto to play Montreal in the first round because Boston lost. That will not happen. That makes me sad. And as I said, this is no man's land because the playoffs begin Tuesday. I'm recording on Monday. So by the time you listen, there will have been games. But as I'm recording this, there is no hockey today. So let's look at some final statistics for the NHL. I'm not going to go to the standings yet because we're going to get to that a little bit later on. So, your points leader and Art Ross Trophy winner, Martin St. Louis of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Here's the kicker. Is not in the playoffs. He is also your assists leader with 43. Not in the playoffs. Your goals leader and Maurice Rocket Richard. First time, 3-time winner. Did I say that right? He's the first guy to win the award 3 times. And that's Alexander Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals with 32 goals. Stamkos led the way most of the year, but kind of tailed off the end again, though. Tampa Bay not going to the playoffs, yet had Stamkos with 29 goals, Martin St. Louis with 60 points, Stamkos with 57 points. I mean, just phenomenal players, just couldn't get the wins because probably... No, that was it. They had Stamkos, St. Louis, and probably LeCavalier was up there a little bit, but it wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs. Washington is in, and Ovi has won his 3rd Rocket Richard trophy. Your plus-minus leader, Pascal Dupuis of the Pittsburgh Penguins with 31. Your goals against average leader, Craig Anderson, as he's been 90% of the year with a 1.69 goals against. A .941 save percentage also has him leading that category. Your most wins, 3 goalies, Henrik Lundqvist, Antti Niemi, and Nicklas Backstrom, all with 24. And your shutout leaders are tied, all with 5. And they are Jimmy Howard of the Detroit Red Wings, Tuukka Rask of the Boston... I was about to say Celtics. Wow! Boston Bruins, Corey Schneider of the Vancouver Canucks, Pekka Rinne of the Nashville Predators, and Mike Smith of the Phoenix Coyotes. And of those, only 3 of them are in the playoffs. Oh wait, Nashville's in, aren't they? Let me just double check that. Right here. No, they are not. They are not. I was wrong. Nashville's not in. So only 3 of those goalies, Corey Schneider, Tuukka Rask, Jimmy Howard, in the playoffs. The Coyotes miss, and so did the Nashville Predators. Another team that missed that I was quite disappointed at was the Columbus Blue Jackets. On Saturday, which is the last day of the season for most teams, with the exception of Boston and Ottawa, all the teams that needed to win won. But because all the teams that needed to win won, that means Columbus lost. Because they won their game, however, due to the fact that Minnesota winning put them 1 point ahead of Columbus, it eliminated Columbus from the playoffs, even though they won their game. I was disappointed because the last, I would say, 3 weeks of the season, the Columbus Blue Jackets were probably one of the most entertaining and very tough teams. They could have been that 8th seed that gone all the way. They had such a great team, and they turned it on just a little bit too late. If only Colorado could have beaten Minnesota that one time. Makes me disappointed. Also, other disappointments. But, moving on. Your 3 stars from the final week of the season, the regular season. Jimmy Howard, first star from the Detroit Red Wings, 4-0. And Detroit had to fight to get in the playoffs. They were in danger of missing the playoffs for the first time in 22 years. They have now consecutively made playoffs in 22 straight years. However, this is why. Jimmy Howard was 4-0 with a .75 goals against average and a .969 save percentage in the final 4 games of the season. 2 of those games being shutouts. They needed to win these games, and they did on the strength of Jimmy Howard. Your second star, also from the Detroit Red Wings, Henrik Zetterberg. 10 points in the last 4 games. 2 goals, 8 assists, guiding the Red Wings to the 7th seed in the Western Conference. And as I said, they really needed this, and they came on at the right time. Your third star of the week, a player not in the playoffs, Nail Yakupov of the Edmonton Oilers, who scored 6 goals in 4 games to help the Oilers finish the season with a couple of victories. He was held off the score sheet in Anaheim, but in his final 2 games, he scored 1 goal and then managed a hat trick, and he did really well in the final week of the season. He led all rookies with 17 goals and 31 points. So those are your final 3 stars of the regular season. Alright, so that means it is playoff time, and for the first time since 1996, all original 6 teams have qualified for the Stanley Cup playoffs. That being the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers, and the... oh my goodness, I can't remember the 6th... let me just take a quick peek here. I'm cheating, I know. Okay, the Chicago Blackhawks, I mentioned them. Detroit Red Wings, there we go. I can't believe I messed that up. Okay, so let's start again. Your 6 teams that made it, your original 6, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, the Boston Bruins, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, and the... that's still only 5. Oh, and the New York Rangers. Wow, I am so bad at that tonight. I usually know the 6 easily. And then I named one time and, whatever. Maybe I need a drink. Just give me a second here. Okay, as I said, the NHL playoffs start on Tuesday, so they will have started already by the time you're listening to this. However, I have made my predictions. Now, I wanted to get a friend on here to make predictions, but he's not really into the hockey mood as much right now. His team, unfortunately, the Colorado Avalanche, finished last. They fired their coach, Joe Sacco. Also of note, Joe Nieuwendyk of the Stars is no longer general manager. I just want to mention that really quick. His team, the Colorado Avalanche, had one of their worst seasons in a while, hence firing Joe Sacco as the coach. The good news, though, on Monday is they did win the draft lottery. So while they weren't the worst team in the league, they did win the draft lottery, which means they do get to pick the first overall pick in the upcoming NHL entry draft, which is rumored to be Seth Jones, a defenseman for the Portland Winterhawks, who's also a native, or at least a birthplace resident of the Colorado area, so they could be drafting a hometown boy. And it looks like it very well could happen. And, you know, the central scouting is not wrong very often, and I mean, Seth Jones seems to be a great player, a great fit for the Colorado Avalanche, who need a defenseman at this time. He would be joining a young team as well, so you never know. It could be very well good that they won the draft lottery. So, as I said, the NHL playoffs begin on Tuesday. Yesterday, for those of you listening on Wednesday, of course. And we're going to take a look at the first round matchups. I will make my predictions. Now, as I said, I wanted somebody here I was going to try and get somebody on the show here to predict with me. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So what I decided to do is decided to make a random roll, as it may be. I am a former Dungeons and Dragons player, which means I have a lot of different dice. And what I did is I took two 8-sided die. The odd numbers on the one colored of die, which was yellow, what represented all the even-numbered teams. So, like, for example, 1 versus 8 in the format in the Eastern Conference would be Penguins versus the Islanders. So 1, 3, 5, and 7 represented the Penguins. 2, 4, 6, and 8 represented the Islanders. Then I rolled another 8-sided die, and I had to make sure the roll was over 4 or higher. If the roll was under 4, I would roll it again. If the roll was 8, it counted as a 7. The second die was a blue die, and it represented the amount of games. So I rolled dice to compete against me in my predictions. So let's take a look at the predictions. Eastern Conference, Round 1. The first place Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the 8th place New York Islanders. The dice chose the Penguins in 5. Let me say something right now. I picked the Penguins to win in 6. However, I don't want the Penguins to win. I want the Islanders to win. I want Nabokov to steal the series. I hate the Penguins. I hate Sidney Crosby. I want that man out of the playoffs. The sooner, the better. However, logically speaking, I don't think the Islanders are going to do it. So I have to hope for a second-round matchup that can eliminate the Penguins. I hate the Penguins with everything. I hate the Penguins and Sidney Crosby. I hate Crosby more. Because Crosby is on that team, I hate the Penguins. And Marc-Andre Fleury. I think he's a horrible goalie. He gets lucky more than he's good. Like, some people say you got to be good to be lucky and lucky to be good. He's just lucky. He's not good at all. I would not rank him in my top 10 goalies in the NHL right now at all. He would probably crack my top 15. I can't stand him. I think he's a terrible goalie. I hate Sidney Crosby. I hate the hype that he gets, especially in Canada. He's treated like he's Wayne Gretzky, and he's not. Wayne Gretzky was a phenomenal player, and he wasn't a pussy-whining little bitch. But I did pick the Penguins in 6 because, let's be real, Penguins are probably going to win that series. Second matchup in the Eastern Conference, the number 2 Montreal Canadiens, or the Habs, versus the number 7 seed, the Ottawa Senators. The dice picked the Senators in 7. My choice, Habs in 6. That's right, I hate the Senators. I am not a Senators fan. I will never be a Senators fan as long as I am a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I will be a Toronto Maple Leafs fan for the rest of my life. I cannot stand the Ottawa Senators. I hate them even more because they have Daniel Alfredson on the team, who's a jerk. I know he's loved in Ottawa, and he can stay in Ottawa. I don't care. Ottawa can have him. However, I will never cheer for the Ottawa Senators. I don't care they're a Canadian team. When they were the final Canadian team in the year they went to the Stanley Cup final, you know who I cheered for? The eventual winners, the Anaheim Ducks. And you know how quickly I said the Ducks in 4? The Ducks won it in 5. That was amazing. I hated the Ottawa Senators then. I hate them now. I'm picking the Habs. Third matchup in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Capitals versus the New York Rangers. The dice chose the Rangers in 7. My choice, the Capitals in 6. Alex Ovechkin's hot. Braden Holtby is hot. They are hot at the right time. They are going into the playoffs as one of the hottest teams in the league. Few exceptions, but the Capitals are definitely my pick in this matchup. The next matchup is the one I didn't want. The Boston Bruins versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. I wanted the Leafs to play the Habs because the Leafs had a better record against the Habs. The Leafs played the Boston Bruins very poorly in the past. However, this is the playoffs. Both teams, though, are coming into the playoffs on lows. They lost their last few games. The Leafs were like 2-2 in their last 4. The Bruins were like 1-3. They're both not playing up to potential in their last few games. So they're coming into the playoffs not very strong. However, the dice chose the Leafs in 6. I chose the Leafs in 7. I know 7 means the 7th game will be in Boston, but I think this series is going the distance. But I'm still picking the Leafs. I would never pick against the Leafs. Even if, logically, I think the Bruins are going to win, I'm picking the Leafs. The dice picked the Leafs, so, looks like the dice in this round, though, picked, with the exception of the Pittsburgh Penguins, all the quote-unquote underdogs. The Senators over the Habs, the Rangers over the Capitals, and the Leafs over the Bruins. Whereas I picked all favorites except for the Leafs over the Bruins. So let's move to the Western Conference round 1 and see how we go there. In the Western Conference, the first place Chicago Blackhawks, not only first in the West, but first in the league, are taking on the number 8 seed Minnesota Wild. The dice chose the Blackhawks in 6. I choose the Blackhawks in 5. I'm actually not even sure the Wild can win one game, but I'm going to give them one at home. I always like to do that when I don't like picking games in 4, but I just don't see how the Wild can compete with the Blackhawks. I don't. So I'm giving the Wild one win at home, and the Blackhawks will win it in Game 5 in Chicago. Excuse me. Second matchup, the number 2 Anaheim Ducks versus the number 7 Detroit Red Wings. The dice chose the Ducks in 5. Well, I think that's a bit ambitious. The Detroit Red Wings are a perennial playoff team. 22 straight years. That says a lot. However, unfortunately, I also chose the Ducks. I chose them more appropriately, though. I'm going to say the Wings are going to push it to 7, but unfortunately the Ducks are going to come away with the series win. I know my friend Joey is going to be upset at that comment, but I don't think the Red Wings have it this year, my friend. I'm sorry. I like the Red Wings. You know I have nothing against the Detroit Red Wings, but I just think the Ducks have a better team this year. And that's why I'm picking the Ducks in 7. Third matchup, the Vancouver Canucks in 3rd place taking on the 6th place San Jose Sharks. The dice chose the Sharks in 7. I chose the Sharks in 6. That's right, I chose the Sharks in 6. You want to know why? 1, Corey Schneider, not Corey Crawford. Corey Crawford plays for Chicago. Corey Schneider is not 100%, and Roberto Luongo chokes in the playoffs. I think the Canucks go out first round this year. Bye-bye, Vancouver. Maybe they'll trade Bobby Lou in the offseason. Who knows? Who cares? As long as he doesn't come to Toronto. The Sharks, I think, are the better team, even though they finished 6th in the conference. I think I like more players. I also think Antti Niemi is a better goaltender, a more solid goaltender than either of the Canucks goalies, and that's why I picked the Sharks. And in the final Western Conference matchup, the number 4 St. Louis Blues versus the number 5 and reigning Stanley Cup champions Los Angeles Kings. The dice chose the Blues in 4. Really, dice? Really? I chose the Kings in 6. Why? 2 reasons. 1, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions. 2, the goaltending situation in St. Louis is worse than the goaltending situation in LA. And I think the Los Angeles Kings run last year will prepare them for this year's run. Will they go deep? I think they can. And I think they beat the Blues in 6 games. So, for the Western Conference, it looks like the dice pretty much went with all the favorites except for the Sharks versus the Canucks. Whereas I went with all the favorites. I went split. Went with the favorites for the Blackhawks and the Ducks, but then I took the Sharks to upset the Canucks and the Kings to upset the Blues. So those are the predictions for the NHL Playoffs round number 1 from me and the Dice. The Dice and I will have a competition throughout the playoffs, so stay tuned throughout all 4 rounds to see how we do. I hope to maybe have somebody in the second round. Maybe we'll get Zach in here again. Who knows? But for now, we got me and the Dice dueling it out on Warlock Wednesdays. And speaking of Warlock Wednesdays, that is a end of this week's show. I'm pretty sure I covered everything. Oh, wait, one final thing. Forgot to mention this. This past week, I tweeted that, and I said it on last week's show, but I tweeted that Hollywood Babylon, which is not a sponsor, but is the reason I wanted to get into podcasting. Kevin Smith and Ralph Garman are 2 men who really inspired me to want to do this. They're very entertaining. Kevin Smith, I've been a fan of his for a long time. A friend of mine that actually used to be a roommate introduced me to his movies Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jane and Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2, and so on. Well, some of those movies weren't out when he introduced me. I think it was just Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma that was out at the time. Actually, I seen Dogma. It was the first movie I seen at the new theater that I'm working at way back in 1999. So that's kind of cool. But I've been a Kevin Smith fan for a very long time. Ralph Garman, I'm only a recent fan within the last couple of years, but I find them so entertaining. Well, this week I tweeted that they found a new home for Hollywood Babylon, and I'm hoping most of Smodco at the Hollywood Improv. And I tweeted that, and Ralph Garman and Kevin Smith not only retweeted it, but favorited one of my tweets. And from 2 guys that being the reason that I got into podcasting, that is just awesome. And to have them respond on the social media network of Twitter, which is not a sponsor, but to have them respond like that was just very cool for me, and I enjoyed it, and I thank them for everything that they do. I don't know if they listen to my podcast, but if they do, if they ever come across it, I want them to know that they're the reason. that I do what I do every week. And I hope you've enjoyed this week. I hope you enjoy all the podcasts here on the Ehnother Podcast Network, from Ehnother Monday to Real Tuesday to Warlock Wednesdays, and we're always looking for more. So hope you enjoyed the show. Come back next week. Have a good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, whatever you're listening. And that's it for me this week. I'm out. And I'm back. Actually, this is an edition that I'm making on Tuesday. I actually had a full segment to add. It was a late edition. It was done after I had already recorded on Monday, and I messed up. I screwed up the recording. And what this recording was a good friend of mine, Joey, talking hockey playoff predictions. As I said earlier, I only had the dice to be the competition for the picks. And then Joey and I sat down and we recorded a conversation, or I thought we recorded a conversation, talking about the hockey playoffs. So I just want to at least get his picks in here, and we'll definitely do a better go of it in round 2, because he's going to come back and he's going to predict round 2 with us as well. But I want to give you his round 1 predictions. I messed up. This is my fault. This should have been a nice long segment of hockey talk. We'll get to it. I want to apologize to Joey. I'm sorry I messed that up. I thought it was recording. It said it was recording. It wasn't recording. So here we go. Here is picks for the Eastern Conference Playoffs, round 1. The Penguins versus the Islanders. He pretty much called this a wash. It was a big mismatch in his opinion, and he picked the Penguins in 5. In the second matchup, the Habs versus the Senators, he found this one a little bit more difficult because there are so many factors to take into account, but his final conclusion is that without Spezza, the Senators just didn't have the firepower to beat the Habs, and he picked the Habs in 6. The next matchup had the Capitals versus the Rangers, and in this one, again, with the way the Capitals have played, getting into the playoffs, very hot, and the Rangers being a tough team with Henrik Lundqvist, he still went with the favorite, the Capitals, but he took them in 7. He said that the Rangers would push this to 7 games, and that's his choice. His final matchup, Bruins versus the Leafs. This one again, he said there was a lot of factors that could go into it, but he felt that the Leafs are not ready to move on in the playoffs, and the Bruins are a much better team, much better depth, possibly, and picked the Bruins in 6. Moving over to the Western Conference, which for Joey is his better conference because he's a Detroit Red Wings fan, so he sees a lot of this side of the games, at least until next year when the alignment changes. So in the Western Conference, the first matchup, he has the Blackhawks crushing the Minnesota Wild in 4 games. He truly believes this is a complete mismatch, that the Wild backdoored into the playoffs, and that they maybe don't even deserve to be there. In the shortened season, they kind of made it in. One of the things we talked about was in the shortened season, there was teams that probably made the playoffs that probably shouldn't, and teams that missed that probably should have been in. So he picks the Blackhawks in 4 over the Wild. In the second matchup, he has the Ducks versus the Wings, and he's a big Detroit Red Wings fan, and he doesn't like the way the Ducks have been playing of late. He said they started the season hot, which kind of solidified them the playoff positioning. They did finish second, so he's not going to take that away from them, but he still picked the Detroit Red Wings to win in 6, and that's not a bad choice. They've gone into the playoffs hot. In their last week of the season, as I mentioned earlier, 4 games, they were 4-0. Jimmy Howard had a .75 save percentage, or goals against average. He had 2 shutouts in that time, so I mean they are hot. So maybe they can ride that and win this series. In the third matchup, the Canucks versus the Sharks. Again, he was very torn here. He actually pondered this one for quite some time. Again, I wish I had the recording so you could hear it. A lot of the stuff we talked about was really great. However, he did end up going with the favorite Canucks in 7. He did say that this was going to be a tough series, and so he picked the Canucks in 7. Now, the next series is the closest. The Blues versus the Kings. And in this one, he again contemplated quite a bit, but felt that with the scoring depth of the Kings and the lack of depth, or the lack of depth on defense for the Blues, even though they still have some good defensive players, he still felt the Kings, being the Stanley Cup champions and having such a great overall team, that the Kings would win this, and he picked the Kings in 6. So those are Joey's picks. As they compare to mine, we both picked the Penguins, we both picked the Habs, we both picked the Capitals. So we're both kind of in sync there. We picked different games, but that's fine. We varied on the Bruins and the Leafs. I picked the Leafs, he picked the Bruins. I'm a Leafs fan. I'm going to try and give them the edge. I said they'd win in 7. I didn't say it'd be easy or anything. We agree that the Blackhawks are going to win. We disagree on the Wings and the Ducks. I think the Ducks are going to win, but he picked the Wings, and he made a legitimate case for it. I also think the Sharks can upset the Canucks because, as I said earlier, I think the Canucks choke in the playoffs. He thinks the Canucks will win this round, but possibly not the next. And we both picked the Kings advancing in the final matchup, and we both picked the Kings in 6. So we both think that the Kings are going to win that on home ice. So those are the extra picks. It extends this a little bit longer. I know that you're probably thinking, oh, it's over and you're going to shut it down. I hope you gave it an extra listen. If not, that's fine. I want to again apologize to Joey. He took the time and we had this all recorded, or at least I thought it was. I went looking for it this morning to add it in and couldn't find it anywhere. Somehow the recording didn't record or didn't save. I don't know what happened. I'll have to look into it because we're definitely going to bring Joey back for round 2. So again, apologies to Joey, apologies to you because there would have been more to hear. But here's the picks, and I hope you enjoyed it. And again, as I said earlier, hope you enjoy the show and you come back every week. And I'm out. Thanks for listening to Ehnother Podcast from Ehnotherpodcast.com. Don't forget to go on iTunes and or download right from Ehnotherpodcast.com. That's EHNOTHER podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at Ehnother Podcast. Be sure to check back for tomorrow's show only on Ehnother Podcast, your Canadian podcast network. Ehnotherpodcast.com. Not a sponsor.